Dr. Siobhan O'Sullivan does like knowing animals. Dr. Siobhan O'Sullivan does like knowing animals.
Hey you guys, welcome to Knowing Animals, the podcast. This episode is from our Protecting Animals series where we speak to animal advocates past and present about the work they do for animals. My name's Siobhan O'Sullivan and I do like knowing animals. Well, this episode of Knowing Animals - Protecting Animals is coming to you, or is brought to you, I should say, by ASA. ASA is the Australasian Animal Studies Association. Now, ASA does fantastic things to support animal studies scholars, including running a conference every 2 years. The next conference will take place in 2019 in New Zealand. I've already submitted my abstract. And do you know what? The wonderful Annie Potts, who is running the conference, has already told me that I have been accepted to speak there. So things are ticking along. Why not be like me and get your abstract in, and then Annie will be able to get back to you and let you know if you'll be coming, and it will be absolutely fantastic. So think about supporting ASA and think about getting along to their 2019 conference in New Zealand. The call for papers is open now. Now we have a second sponsor for this episode, and that's MC Pony. Now, you all know MC Pony because you just heard the intro music to this podcast, and that is by MC Pony, aka Elizabeth Usher. Now, have you gone and checked out her tunes? She's got quite a few different things available for you to download, for you to listen to. She's got clips on YouTube. So check out MC Pony, Vegan Enthused. You can have a look at her website and Facebook page in the notes for this episode. And check it out, have a listen. Maybe you're putting on a festival. Maybe you need some music. Maybe you need something commissioned. MC Pony's the person for you. Right. Well, this episode is coming to you from lovely Brisbane town. The sun is shining quite gloriously in the sky, and I'm very, very lucky to be joined by an old friend of mine. Yes, indeed. It's always nice when I have people I know on the show. So this week, I'm joined by Ruth Hatten. Now, Ruth is a long-standing animal advocate. She's worked for animals in a lot of different capacities. I met Ruth when she was the legal counsel for Voiceless, which is the Animal Protection Institute, and Ruth was based in Sydney at that time and working with Voiceless. Ruth has been involved also with the Barristers Animal Welfare Panel, and more recently, Ruth has been taking a bit of a different tack to assist animals. She's established her own company and she offers nutritional advice for people wanting to transition to a plant-based diet. And she's also offering complementary therapies for dogs and cats, for companion animals. So we'll hear all about this in the episode. Welcome to the podcast, Ruth.
Thanks, Siobhan. It's great to see you again.
Yes, it's lovely to have you here. So, Ruth, can you start by telling us, I guess at the point where I first knew you, why animal law? Why did you get involved with animal law?
So I guess I have loved animals since forever. And by the time I'd, been a child and became an adult, I decided to go to law school and then became a lawyer. I was a vegetarian at the time and I thought, I want to help animals more than just not eating them. What can I do? I'm a lawyer, I've got these skills, how can I use them to help animals? So in my search for finding how I could do that, I discovered animal law. Now, this was, I can't even remember how long ago this was. We're talking maybe 10, 15 years ago. There really weren't any jobs. I knew about Voiceless and obviously the, other animal organisations that had lawyers, but generally speaking, if you get one of those jobs, you don't leave anytime soon. So there was nothing at that time. So I couldn't just make that transition from being construction lawyer to animal lawyer. So I started teaching myself animal law. I read course guides, I read textbooks, I went to seminars, I joined a university animal welfare group. And then through that process, I met Katrina Sharman, who was legal counsel at Voiceless at the time. And down the track, a job opportunity came because she decided that she was leaving. I applied for the job and I got it. And so that's really a long way around getting to how I got involved in animal law.
Yes, wonderful. And I can remember meeting you at an animal law workshop on, I think, the Gold Coast. And that was just when you were about to take over from Katrina, and she was there and you were there. So you did a lot of amazing things, a lot of different things while you were at Voiceless. Can you tell listeners some of the services or some of the work you did for animals while you were there?
Okay, so Voiceless's core areas, at least they were back then, because obviously there's been a bit of change in their scope recently. But I believe the groups of animals are the same in terms of being factory farmed animals and the commercial kangaroo industry. So everything was tied into those groups of animals. And we did a lot of, it wasn't, people always ask me, what is an animal lawyer? What do you do? And working at Voiceless was quite different because I was an animal lawyer. I was a lawyer for that charity. I did their in-house legal work, but I also got the great opportunity to go and speak to people about what's wrong with the law, what's good about the law, what's bad with the law, how does it impact animals. I got to, some of the work that I really loved doing was working directly with politicians to advise them about where the law is failing animals and how we could make improvements to those laws for the betterment of animals. So that was one of my favourite things. Touring the country to do the animal law lecture series every year, full on hard work, but got to meet some really, really great people. And it was always so inspiring and motivating to be educating people who hadn't thought about these issues before on, the subject matter of the lecture series at the time. So what else did we do? I wrote, contributed to writing the materials and publications and reviewing them from a legal perspective and things like that, speaking to the media about matters that are impacting animals and that were relevant to our core areas. So it was a pretty involved and eclectic, I guess, job.
So as you said, one of the big features was always the annual animal law lecture series. And for listeners who might be interested in knowing more, a lot of those lectures are up on YouTube and available via the Voiceless website. Who were some of the people you organised to bring to Australia, Ruth?
Antoine Gutschel. From, where is he from? Switzerland.
Switzerland.
Yes, yeah. Switzerland. We're still connected. We still chat every now and again on Facebook. Such a great character. Really enjoyed that lecture series with him. Who else? What was her name?
Oh, I don't know.
From Canada?
From Canada. I was thinking Will Potter, but was that after
No,
your
that
time?
wasn't me. I think that was the first one after I left.
You left, yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's right on the tip of my tongue.
Well, this
Canada, it was about the commercial kangaroo industry, and she was giving her perspective on the seal industry.
Right, that's right. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
It's going to... Oh,
well,
it'll come to me
do you
after.
know what? People who are listening and want to know more, this is the perfect opportunity or the perfect invitation to go and look it up, because I know for certain that these law lectures are available on YouTube. I know that because I've spoke at some of them and I've seen myself pop up. Ruth's just had her moment. Who was it?
Leslie Bisgold.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes. Got it.
Fantastic.
How could I forget?
So animal law has certainly grown over the last kind of 10 years, 15 years. What do you say to people who ask your advice on how they can use the law to help animals?
Well, that's a good question, because I have quite a negative view on the law in terms of its ability to help animals. The change is very slow, and I mean, if you look at the cage eggs situation, when I was at Voiceless, I was heavily involved in campaigns for banning cage eggs with the Greens of New South Wales. And, you know, there were changes. Legislation was changed, but it took a really, really long time, and it's still not changed across the board. Cage eggs have not been banned in this country. And I guess that's where my frustration comes from, is that, yes, law is definitely a way to help animals, and we really do need to do the work. We need to be speaking to politicians. There needs to be organisations there who are dedicated to changing those laws. But it's not the be-all and end-all. And, you know, the same situation, you know, when I was looking for a job as an animal lawyer, there aren't many jobs. There's really great ways to get involved from a pro bono perspective. But I think sometimes it's difficult. It's very difficult because, you know, I've been involved in my work with the Barristers Animal Welfare Panel. I've been involved in cases that have gone to the Supreme Court, and we've lost. We've had some of the best lawyers working on our cases, but we lose because of the way the law is written. And I don't mean to discourage people, because I can hear myself talking and it all sounds very discouraging. The work needs to be done. The work is really, really important. But I think the most important thing is education, because the more people who know what the issues are, the community groundswell there is, politicians will start to listen, and then with that, you get the changes in the laws.
So in your view, at this point in time, the laws are inadequate. It's not just about enforcement and that kind of thing. It's about actually restructuring laws so they're more effective in their protection for animals.
Yes, the laws are very inadequate. And you've got situations now where we're going backwards instead of forwards, with the UK government now deciding not to adopt EU legislation which recognises animals as sentient beings. So effectively what they're saying is animals are no more important than a chair or a table, that they do not feel anything. And that's just ludicrous, because the science says that they are sentient.
So overall, are we going forwards, Ruth, or are we going backwards, or are we stagnant?
I think one area where we're really going forward is in respect of food. So food, the animals that are produced for food are the animals who suffer the greatest in number. And, you know, I always am so amazed when I'll go into a supermarket that I haven't been into for a while. Like the other week I went into one that I rarely go into, and I was amazed by the vegan section. I was just like, holy hell, what's happening? This is brilliant. I mean, a lot of it is processed food, which, you know, it's not great for us, but everything in moderation, right? A little bit of it is fine. But I think the more important thing is that we're getting to see more options in the supermarkets, more plant-based options, which means there's a demand for it. There's an interest in it. Otherwise, the supermarkets wouldn't be doing it, which means the movement is having effect, because more people are choosing to eat less meat or to abstain from eating meat or dairy. And it's the same thing with our takeaways. I went to Grilled on Friday for some takeout, and I had, you know, they've had a vegan burger for some time, but now they've got these two new ones. One of them, which is even has a pea and hemp patty, like hemp at Grilled. It's insane. And then I walk out of Grilled, and there's, I can't remember which pizza place it was, but there's, you know, vegan sweet potato pizza, and now you've got Domino's and Pizza Hut with all their vegan pizzas. Like, it is becoming mainstream, and that's where I see forward movement in the world of animal protection.
So you're saying that really we're more powerful as consumers than we are as citizens?
Definitely. Consumers we operate in a world where everything is dependent on money, making money. As wrong or right as that is, no matter what your political persuasion is, consumers have power, because without consumers, there's no money being made. If people aren't buying the products, businesses are going broke. So yeah, consumer power is massive.
So as we've already noted, you've left Voiceless, and you've got some hesitations about the effectiveness of animal law. And so you've started building up your own business. So part of it is about helping people transition to a plant-based diet. Can you tell us something about how you do that or what's involved with that?
Yeah, so I started this because I wanted to do more and I wanted to do things that were outside of the law because of everything I've said, that I don't believe it's the best way, the best place for me to put my energies. And so I used to always get asked questions about being vegetarian or being vegan, and how I do it and what does my food look like and da-da-da-da. And, I'd have people saying, you should like do coaching or something or charge people for this information, like just help people learn how to do it. I was like, yeah, maybe. And one night at this event, had a conversation with someone. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to give it a go, because if I don't, I'll never know. And helping people to eat less meat or completely remove it from their diets will have an impact on the animals, because the less animals that are less animals that are being eaten, eventually it'll take a bit of time, but the number of animals being farmed for food will reduce because there just won't be the demand for it. And so in my business, which is called the Whole Plant Living Co., I essentially help people. I've got 27 odd years of plant-based experience myself. I first stopped eating meat when I was 11. That's going to give away my age. Actually, then it's more than 27 years.
Let's say quite a few decades.
Quite a few decades of plant-based experience in plant-based eating, and working with a number of different professionals in that time in terms of how I can be the healthiest example of a plant-based eater that I can be. Because I think that's one of the misconceptions, is if you're vegan, you're not healthy. You're thin, you're pasty, you have no energy. And so I want to put out a form of vegan that denies all of those misconceptions. And still people are surprised, really, you're vegan? You don't look vegan, because a vegan is thought to be white, thin, unhealthy looking, pallid skin, you know what I mean? So I want to help people to eat a plant-based diet that is healthy, that consists of whole foods, that is going to help them to thrive on that diet. And then they're more than likely to stick to it for the long term, which means the longer people stick to a plant-based diet, then we see the side effect of that in terms of the decrease in the consumption of animals and the decrease in the slaughter of animals for food.
So what are your top tips for people who, say, care about animals, are aware that there's something problematic about the agricultural practices we have, and also just the fact of killing, want to do something positive for animals, but really like their meat? How would you, what's some of the tactics someone might use to transition to a plant-based diet?
Yeah, so I'm big on non-judgment. I am human. I judge people all the time. But in my business as a plant-based coach, judgment has to be pushed aside, because clients will come to me and they'll have their own goal in mind. So their goal is their goal. It's not my goal. So I've worked with people who want to go 100% plant-based. They want to go vegan. I've worked with people, they just want to start reducing, or they've started reducing. They're no longer eating red meat, but they're still eating white meat. They want to cut out that white meat ultimately. And so I will always work with the client where they're at. And I think I've forgotten what your question is.
What are your top tips?
What are my top tips? So my top tips are to identify what is your goal. Do you want to go 100%, or do you just want to reduce the amount because you're aware of the problems associated with the consumption of meat and or dairy, whether it's for your whether it's for the environment, your health, or for the animals. So work out what it is that you want to achieve. What's your end point? Then don't judge yourself. If you trip up, which you're more than likely going to, you're only human. It's okay. Tomorrow's another day. I always encourage people to go slowly. I think the difference between when I went vegetarian and people today really just, a lot of people I think just cut it all out immediately. And I think that works for some people. But for most people, I think it works better to go slowly. So there's less pressure on you to cut everything out. So it's work out your end goal. Don't judge yourself. Go slowly. And do I have another tip? I think that would be my 3 main tips.
Wonderful. And you've also got to come out to your family and friends as a vegan.
Yes.
But perhaps less tricky than it was in the past.
Definitely. It's much more socially acceptable today.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other part of your business is working with companion animals. And so I know you're doing a range of things such as dog massage, which is what I see you on, pictures on Facebook and things like that. Can you tell us why companion animals benefit from complementary therapies in your view?
Totally. So humans, I was just going to say, if you're a human, well, hello, yes. If you're listening to this, then, well, you could be a cat or a dog. You won't understand it. But anyway, if you are someone who's interested in your own health and well-being, in putting, maybe your body's your temple and you wanted to keep things clean and eat whole foods and things like that, those same principles in terms of healthy eating and reducing the toxic load apply to our furry friends. Unfortunately, they are exposed to a greater number of toxins than we are because of the size of their bodies. They're much smaller than we are. And their exposure is greater as well. Obviously, the exposure is greater because of their size, but also in terms of they don't have a protective layer of clothing or of shoes. So, if they're walking down the street or if they're walking in your home and people have traipsed in everything from outside into their home, they're walking on that, they're lying on it, they'll lick themselves, they'll clean themselves, they absorb all of the toxins that's in the environment. If you're cleaning the floors with chemical products and things like that, they're absorbing all of that. Obviously they've got, their body has a certain functionality that they can process chemicals and toxins out of their body, but the greater the toxic load is, then the harder the body has to work to process the toxins out. So the same rules apply, or the same situation applies in terms of reducing toxic load and eating foods that are appropriate for your anatomy, that are whole foods, that are high in nutrients, to essentially give your body the best chance at being in a state of optimum health, to avoid disease down the track, or to heal from disease that the animal might currently be facing. And looking at natural remedies, as I say as well, but that's all I do. It's the Sahaja Animal Healing. It's all about the natural healing of animals. So healing through their food, healing through natural food-based remedies, healing through things like herbs and things like that. And then the physical therapies, your massage therapy, and also I do Reiki as well. So yeah, it's really, when I work with clients, they're always I guess it makes sense when they hear me talk about that, if we take food, for example, I talk about, if your cat or dog is just eating dry food twice a day, that would be like us going to McDonald's and just eating McDonald's. It really is junk food for pets. So looking at what's the food that's best for them. It's whole foods, it's clean foods, it's foods that are appropriate for cats, foods that are appropriate for dogs. The same way that we would look at what is the best food for us. It's not food that comes in a package. It's not food that doesn't resemble in any way, shape or form the original state, how it was grown in nature. So
interesting. Well, Ruth, I ask everyone who comes on the program to answer 5 quick questions. Are you ready for your 5 quick questions?
I am.
So can you recall when you first started to think that there was something wrong or problematic about the relationship between human and non-human animals?
Yeah, I think it was when I became vegetarian. So as I said before, I've always loved animals. I've always shared my life with animals, and I have to remember this is quick questions. So I was about 10 or 11 and we had some university students staying at our house, and they were vegetarian, and they would speak about being vegetarian. And Mum would make them vegetarian food. So we would all be eating vegetarian food while these university students stayed. And what they said resonated with me because I already knew that I loved animals. And I was like, well, if I love animals, then I don't want to eat them anymore. And these girls have shown that they don't need to. So that was, it was then, like, that was where I identified from the discussions that they had, well, it's not right to eat animals. I don't want to eat them anymore.
What did your mum think?
She was really supportive. She was actually more supportive then than she is now.
Right.
Which is funny because now I'm an adult.
So can you recall the first thing you did to try and bring about change for animals?
Yeah, well, I went vegetarian.
If you had to name one animal advocate who's had a big impact on you, who would it be?
There are many, but I have to pick one, which I do. I would have to say Gary Francione. He's considered by many to be very extreme compared to, say, your animal welfarists. And in some respects, when you look at it from, an average perspective, then yes, he definitely would be on the extreme side. But his baseline, his base position, I really agree with in terms of that animals have inherent rights individually. It's not just about kangaroos as a species. It's about the impact on each individual kangaroo that, say, property development is having. And it's not about what's best for the masses, the greater good, but what is morally right and fair for each individual animal.
Have you had the chance to meet him?
No, I haven't.
What's the most important thing animal advocates can do for animals?
I actually have two. There's one that applies to all, and then there's one that just applies to farm animals. To farm animals, the best thing is not to eat them. And for all animals, it's to learn and educate those who are willing to listen. And I say willing because I don't think there's any point in bashing people over the head with information that they just don't care about. It's like hitting your head against a brick wall. But if you know there's someone who's interested, if someone asks you a question, use the opportunity to educate them. If someone is doing something and, they're having a conversation with you and you say, well, if they ask you what you think about something, I always say, well, I can tell you, but I have to warn you, it may impact on your decisions that you make down the track, and I can tell you some things that are pretty gruesome. So if you're happy to hear about it, I'm happy to talk to you about it, whether it's now, whether it's at some point in time. Because, as I said, I don't think it's worth bashing your head up against a brick wall trying to educate people who really just don't give a damn.
If you had the power to change one thing about the human-non-human animal relationship, what would it be?
That is super easy. I always joke about if I was the ruler of the world in a dictatorship, because it would be a dictatorship, no one would eat animals. The whole world would be vegan.
Well, so Ruth, what are you working on next? What are you doing for animals next?
Quite a lot, but firstly, I'm finishing my animal naturopathy diploma. And once that's done, I'm hoping to have some downtime. So it doesn't really help animals, but it does help animals because then I have more energy to help. So there you go. Got a lot of things planned in the next 12 to 18 months, including I like to give back a lot. So I'm going to start doing some free Reiki healings on my Facebook page for animals. So I do animal Reiki and putting some more freebies on my website for my plant-based people. So if they're plant-based curious or they're already plant-based. And also I'm going to be starting a donation scheme for one of our animal rescue groups up here in Brisbane, starting to take a percentage of all of my earnings and do a monthly giving program to this particular charity. So big focus on giving back and getting my damn studies done.
And so where can people find out more about your work and your business?
So just ruthhatten.com. So it's just Ruth, how you'd normally spell it, Hatten, Hatten. If you just Google Ruth Hatten, it'll come up. And on there you'll find out all about my animal healing work and the plant-based coaching as well.
Wonderful. Well, Ruth, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to the listeners for joining us for Knowing Animals, the podcast where we talk to animal studies scholars and animal advocates about the work they do for animals. Are you following us on Twitter at knowing_animals or on Facebook at Knowing Animals? Perhaps you are, perhaps you're not. Have you left a review on iTunes? Reviews make it easier for people to find us. I'm Siobhan O'Sullivan and I do like knowing animals.